Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are exploring some of the spookiest folklore tales from Brazil. These stories have been told for generations, filled with mysterious creatures and eerie happenings that capture the imagination. So sit back and join me as we take a look at some of the most intriguing and chilling legends from Brazilian folklore. I love everything eerie, spooky, mysterious, creepy. And growing up, there was something about my country's folklore tales that just fascinated me. Now, Brazil is a huge country, and each region has its own known tales, but a strong theme amongst some of the most popular tales in Brazil is nature, mostly focused on protecting nature. If you know anything about Brazilian geography, you would know that we are a tropical country. Therefore, we have a lot of forests and rivers and huge natural parks. And in the north, for example, it's where the famous and not very well taken care of Amazon rainforest is, or at least a majority of it. And that's why nature is such a strong theme within Brazilian folklore. Now, with that said, like I mentioned before, Brazil is a huge country. So there are other themes that are brought up in these tales as well. So today I'm bringing 4 stories that I personally think have a good creepy and eerie factor. And I'll be talking about them from least creepy to most creepy. So let's go. So the first tale on this list, and the least creepy one in my opinion, is the tale of Boitatá. Some of these names I will be translating because they have a translation already that's known or it's possible to translate, and some of them I won't, and this is one of them. So that's the name, Boitatá. So this fits right into that like nature-centered motif I mentioned before, because this creature's sole purpose is to protect the forest specifically. So this, in my opinion, is the most mythical looking creature that we have on this list, at least because the Boitatá is known as a giant fire snake who protects the fields against those who burn them. It has many eyes that also spit fire. So very mythical looking creature we have in our hands here. Some say you'll go crazy if you cross it, like if you look at the snake, at Boitatá. Some say that if you just stay still, you might be able to survive its fury. But in general, this character is seen as this fierce protector and sometimes maybe brutal protector of forest fields, specifically against fires. That is a big problem here in Brazil, unfortunately. So it makes sense that we have this really strong character in our folklore that, you know, its sole purpose is to protect the forest against that. So my second one on this list is Cuca. Again, that's her name, so there's no reason to translate it. I'll explain what exactly she is in a minute. So I considered putting this one in first place because we're going from least spooky to most spooky, right? But that's mostly because I have a very specific memory of it. I relate this character, who is a character of our folklore, to a TV character that has really nothing that spooky going on for her, but I'll explain. But then I decided to put in second place because when I was looking more into the actual character from the from our folklore and from the stories, I decided she was a bit creepier than Boitata because she's a character that actually has a more of a nefarious agenda. Okay, so what I was talking about earlier about my core memory of this character, it's because this character is part of this really famous, popular series of books, of Brazilian books by this author called Monteiro Lobato. She actually is shown in many other stories in Brazilian literature, but this is the one that I feel like everybody knows. And she was in these books and became very famous, and they also made an adaptation for TV, and there's plenty of it from like different generations, but the one I grew up with had more of a cartoonish look to her, so she wasn't necessarily creepy. I remember watching her when I was young, when I was a child, and I didn't find her creepy or eerie or anything. She was more like a funny character. She was like the villain, but like that villain that can never do anything right. It's kind of clumsy. Her plans never go her way, and she definitely had more of a cartoonish look. I'll put pictures on the screen so you guys understand what I'm talking about. Now, in the actual lore, though, she's much more of a serious and, like I said, nefarious sort of character. So this is a hybrid of a woman and an alligator. Quite of an interesting mix here, who kidnaps kids. So like I said, much more creepy than our last guy, right? Now, this story has lots of different versions. Honestly, that's just how it is with any folklore tale out there. In some, she's just like a really old witch, and like just like an old woman, an elderly looking woman. And in others, she is this hybrid of woman with alligator, like I just explained. So you can find many different versions of her, but the one that we know the most, at least here in Brazil, it's definitely the alligator one. Some sources say it actually stems from a Portuguese tale. So it's a story that came from Portugal, and it spread out in Brazil during the colonization period, which makes sense. But still, it's deemed as this Brazilian folklore tale. She's already known, especially because she's mentioned in a lot of art literature, specifically this series of books that I mentioned. A funny thing that I remember is that I think it was in 2017 or 18, a few years ago, I remember seeing on Twitter, back when Twitter was still Twitter, that there was this meme or this image of the character from the TV show, from Cuca, going around, and a lot of like foreigners were, I think especially like Americans, were using, I think, like kind of as a meme, but they obviously didn't know, and I think it was because of the way she looked. It was kind of funny. And I remember that someone, I don't remember who it was, kind of like a famous-ish person, decided to sell merch with her face, and Brazilians did not like that. I remember just seeing a lot of Brazilian people being mad at this person because they were like, oh, this is a iconic character from a folklore, and she's actually from this famous TV show. I don't think you can use her image to sell merch and everything, which was kind of funny. That's just a funny anecdote that I have about this one. Okay, now we're heading into more creepy territory with the headless mule. In Portuguese is a mula sem cabeça. Yeah, just by the name you can tell that it's a bit more creepy and spooky, right? So this one actually was my favorite folklore tale growing up, because of the visual of it. It's kind of chilling. It's a bit chilling, honestly. to think of this mule literally without a head, right? I mean, the name is self-explanatory. It's literally that, like an animal and mule without a head. But to amp up the creepy factor here, the place where the head is supposed to be, or the place where the head is cut off, you actually have flames coming out of it. So pretty, I don't know, it was a pretty creepy visual when I was a kid. So the legend revolves around this beautiful woman who was involved in a sinful relationship with a priest. Or in some versions, it said that she just did something illicit. She was involved in illicit affairs. And as a result of her transgressions, she is cursed by a powerful entity. And she's like doomed to like roam the nights, basically transformed into this beast, this mule without a head that spits fire. Talk about a curse. So this is obviously meant as a moral lesson. A lot of folk tales, they stem from that. Stories that are told either to try to understand or explain something or to teach a lesson to people, basically. A lot of them have this very traditional sort of, sometimes very religious base to their, you know, moral of the story, basically, of their moral lesson. I'm not a fan of the fact that the woman is the only one cursed in the situation, but it is a 10 for me in the creep factor here, in the creepy factor. And it, like I said, it's one that I always liked growing up. It did creep me out a little bit. I'm not someone who gets scared by like stories or anything like that. Like I love horror movies, I love horror stories, books, anything creepy. But I don't really get scared by them, even when I was a child. But this one was just a tiny bit creepy. I think mostly because of the visuals. It's a very strong visual, this one. And I remember that I always loved to watch like adaptations of this tale to TV growing up. So in some versions of this story, this woman, she transforms into this beast, kind of like a werewolf situation. Sometimes it's like during the full moon, literally like a werewolf, and sometimes it's like on a specific day of the week. So you have different versions too, but she always transforms into this headless mule. Now the last one is the creepiest one in my humble opinion on this list, and it's called Corpo Seco. Now I actually want y'all's opinion on this one because I've had some ideas on how to translate this story. So corpo means body and seco means dry, so something dry, okay? But dry body just sounds kind of like lazy, like, yeah, dry body, that's the translation. So I was thinking about something like the shriveled man or something like that. The shriveled body, the walking corpse. The walking corpse, that could be a good one. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know. So this tale tells the story of a dead man who was cursed to wander the earth after being rejected by God and the devil. Talk about rejection. So yeah, that's where his story starts. The reason for this rejection, again, varies because it's folk tales of folklore. But some say that it was because he committed something incredibly horrible in his life. Some mention that he murdered his own mother. Others say that he didn't keep a promise he made to God. So the reasoning for his curse varies, but all in all, he is this dead man who has no place to go, so he just wanders the earth because he was rejected by heaven and hell. So this is a story that is most popular in the southeast, in the south of Brazil. I actually did not know of this story at all because I'm from the north, So a lot of the other ones, especially the ones who have like a strong nature theme, like I knew of, but this one I didn't, and I was really surprised that I didn't know this one, and it's so creepy. So again, the visual of this one, it's pretty strong, and that is what makes it the creepiest one, because we're literally talking about a walking corpse. This man doesn't have meat on his bones. He's literally just bones and skin, and his skin is like shriveled and dry. That's where the name stems from. And talk about a vision. Like imagine walking around and, you know, encounter that. And his aim is to basically terrorize people that he encounters. He's just this miserable soul. I don't even know if he has a soul in the story that just wanders around because he just did something incredibly horrible when he was alive. So this apparently stems from an European tale, and historically speaking makes sense because, like I mentioned before, this is a tale that's popular in the southeast and south as well. The south of Brazil specifically, it's where you can see the European influence more clearly here in Brazil. Obviously, there's European influence everywhere, but in the south is where you see it more clearly because we have these like little like villages and places and communities where they really try to keep more of their culture. So you have like Italian communities, German communities, and in some of these places they even speak the language a little bit, which is something that's not very common in Brazil. Brazil is not known for being a country that speaks many like languages. Language that's the most spoken here is Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese. Obviously, there are people who speak other languages. We also have, I don't even know how many native languages here in Brazil, but in general, right, if you look at statistics and things like that, the most spoken language is Portuguese. Not even English, it's very spoken here, so we're not known for being like a bilingual or a multilingual country like many countries in Europe, for example. So it is interesting that you have some places where they try to keep alive their roots and they speak these languages, because that's not something you see. So yeah, what do you think? I think this is the creepiest one. Like I said, it's literally a walking corpse just wandering around. I think it's in the right place, but let me know if you disagree with my ranking here after hearing these 4 stories. Tell me which one is your favorite. Also, tell me about the translation. What do you think? What is the best option here? Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, before I finish, I would like to mention again that we're talking about folklore here, so there are many variations, many different versions of these stories. So you might, if you research, for example, you might see other versions of it. I try to stick to the most general versions and the ones that I know best. I did do some research as well. But yeah, I hope you have a wonderful spooky season, or for some people that's just fall. Unfortunately, I don't have much of that here because I do live in a very hot and humid place. So we don't really have that, you know, autumn or fall that you see in the movies and everything during this period. But I love Halloween. I love spooky things. So yeah, this was a really fun video because I was able to merge, you know, a little bit of my culture and my country and also the spooky season. So let me know if you guys like these types of videos, which story was your favorite, and if you have a creepy story from your country or that you like or that you know, let me know in the comments as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.